Good morning and greetings from Northumberland. It's the 10th, Wednesday the 10th of June. It's a damp, gentle, rainy morning in Northumberland. Just the hint of the sun may be able to come through. I say all this because it shows I'm British and I have to talk about the weather before I talk about anything else. I am a fan, that's probably the wrong word. I value icons, images. You can probably see behind me the big icon of the Trinity. You can also catch a glimpse as I look at St Aidan and St Cuthbert and Our Lady. And every day in my study and in the house, I look at the icons of Our Lady, of Jesus, of the Trinity, of St Aidan, St Cuthbert, and the entrance to our house is dominated by an iconic picture by the artist Steve Simpson of a Celtic saint. It's a sort of, I always think of it as a welcoming picture. It depicts an anonymous Celtic saint going through a door, and it seems so appropriate at the entrance to our house. I love icons because for me they are windows into the reality of God's kingdom, windows into heaven, as someone once described them, and they help me to lift my heart up in prayer and worship. They're like church buildings in that respect. But statues particularly, and in the Western Church for most people, statues take the place of icons, statues of Our Lady, statues of patron saints, statues of Jesus. Statues have been in the press this week because of the pulling down of the Colston statue in Bristol, and the way in which it's really got people to think about what the statues represent. I think that's very healthy. I think it's probably dangerous to do too much too soon without reflecting on it, but that's another point. The Colston statue in Bristol had been the subject of a debate for decades. Everyone recognised that Bristol, founded on the slave trade, had to face its past, acknowledge its past, in order to really look at its future. And there'd been various attempts to put up plaques telling the truth about Colston, telling the truth that although he did give to people, to white people in Bristol, he also abused tens of thousands of slaves and was responsible for the death of maybe 20,000 people. How can we ever know? Because without that context, Bristol couldn't look at its past, its present, and its future. That's important for us. There are lots of statues to people that cause all sorts of thoughts. You know, I was reading an article just this morning about the fact that we have Oliver Cromwell and King Charles I almost staring at each other in Parliament. And the marking, the vandalism of the Winston Churchill statue caused a lot of bad feeling for many people. Although, of course, we need to recognise that Churchill, like all of us, was very much a flawed character. My grandfather, born at the beginning of the last century, was named after him because he was very popular early on in the 1910s, etc. But the whole family stopped using his name. My grandfather, called Winston Arthur, had the name Winston, as it were, removed by the family in the 1920s after the actions of Winston Churchill in turning troops on striking miners. I was brought up in a mining area. And there was always an ambivalence about Churchill in the area in which I was brought up, because people said, yes, he had been a great wartime leader, but he was not a safe leader in peacetime. Even the greatest people have arguments about them. And every politician I've ever known have people who say what a great person this person is, And what an awful person. Because that's what human nature is like. I talked in one of these talks about the hupfatu, the human potential to foul things up, what we call sin. And sin is part of our life, and sin is part of our history. And if we don't understand that, and if we don't accept it, and if we try to paint over it in a way that doesn't acknowledge it, we run the risk of repeating the follies and the evils of the past. This week, many people have been moved by watching the drama about the Windrush generation, the treatment in the last few years of people who were invited to come to this country, whose paperwork was never brilliant, who were arrested and tried to be deported from this country, having lived here for 40 or 50 years. We did that as a country, as our government representing us, people we elected did it, because there was no proper understanding of history. There was no proper understanding of the covenant that had been built up between our nation and these people who were invited to come and live and work among us. I suppose what I'm saying is that we have to understand. We have to understand the complexity, the wickedness of our history, so that we may deal with it. We may acknowledge that we are all sinners, including these great men and women on statues, and we pray that we don't repeat the mistakes of the past, but embrace the future with love and hope. May God bless us.